Hey guys, Takara here. With more people spending more time sitting and being sedentary as a result of teleworking, I wanted to take some time to explain and demonstrate foam rolling as a way to combat some of the effects that being more sedentary can have on our bodies. Foam rolling is a type of self-myofascial release, and you may be asking, what is myofascial release? Myofascia, or more broadly called just fascia, is a type of connective tissue that spans throughout our entire body. It encapsulates our muscles, our organs. It's a thin layer that sits kind of between our muscles and our skin, and it kind of basically connects everything in the body is the theory behind it. But it's a web-like type structure, and when it gets tight, it can develop adhesions that prevent it from sliding over itself and tissues the way that it's supposed to. And as a result, we end up with tight spots around our muscles most commonly, and using things like a foam roller is how you can help break up those adhesions to help loosen it and move it the way that it's supposed to. When we have these tight spots or adhesions in the fascia, it can result in decreased flexibility, loss of range of motion at a joint, muscle tightness, pain. This is where trigger points come from, if you've heard of that term before. And so loosening the fascia can help restore flexibility, range of motion, decrease pain and tightness and soreness, and just restore overall function of a tissue. Even though there's a lot of research that supports the idea that foam rolling does help increase range of motion and reduce muscle soreness, there isn't a lot of research out there that has exactly said how often you should foam roll, how long you should roll whenever you do decide to do it. But overall, they've decided that it's a relatively harmless activity to add into your exercise program to help reduce that exercise-related soreness and to help maintain good joint mobility. Even though the research shows it to be a relatively harmless activity, we don't want to do anything that just inflicts pain on ourselves, such as getting a super deep stretch or applying more pressure than is really needed. But other than that, as long as you're using good technique and just doing what you can tolerate, then it's a great thing to add into your current program. Even though research doesn't say exactly how long you should take to roll each muscle group, most studies do agree that rolling for 10 to 30 seconds for about 2 to 3 sets has those beneficial effects of increasing flexibility, range of motion, and decreasing muscle soreness. I wanted to take just a few minutes to show you guys how to properly roll out some of the major muscle groups that are pretty easy to use a foam roller on and tend to be the areas that we develop a lot of muscle tightness. Areas like our hamstrings, our quads, hip flexors, glutes, calves, our lats, and then up between our shoulder blades, kind of our upper back area. These muscle groups tend to get really tight, especially whenever we're doing a lot of sitting. These are a lot of the muscle groups that help support our posture. And so obviously, if these areas are tight, it can end up resulting in even worse posture. So here we go. When you're foam rolling, you're just using your body weight on the roller to apply pressure to whatever area you're trying to address. We're going to start with our glutes. Probably one of the easiest groups to use a foam roller on. All you need to do is just sit on the foam roller. You want to start just facing straight ahead. You can lean back on your hands, and you're just going to roll back and forth along the length of that muscle. You can rotate on the foam roller, and that's going to address different areas within a muscle, whether to the outside or to the inside. If you come up on an area that feels especially tender, you don't necessarily want to stay right on top of that area. you want to work maybe an inch or two above or below that area and just work back and forth for maybe 10 seconds and then move on to the next spot. Next, we're going to move to our hamstrings. You can either do both legs at the same time for your hamstrings, so you would just put both legs over the top of the foam roller, lift your hips up off the floor, and then use your arms to push yourself back and forth. Or you can do one leg at a time, slide that foam roller out to where you're just on the inside portion of the roller, position one leg over the top. You can use your other foot on the floor with your knee bent to help support your weight a little bit more. And then you're just going to roll back and forth. On some of these bigger muscle groups, like your hamstrings and your quads, I think it's easier to work in sections of thirds. So I might work the bottom third of my hamstring and then move that foam roller up just a little bit, work the middle third, and then roll it up a little bit further and work the top third. Moving on to our calves, similar to the hamstrings, you can either put both legs on the roller, lift your hips again, and you can roll back and forth along your calves. You have to scoot it out a little bit. You can roll like that, or you can switch to one leg like we did with our hamstrings, and same idea, just roll back and forth. Like we did with our glutes, you can rotate your leg to the outside with your toe out or to the inside with your toe in, and that's going to hit different portions of your calf as well. While we're on our back, we can move up the body a little bit and target the muscles up and around our shoulder blades. So you're just going to position that roller up between your shoulder blades or a little bit under your shoulder blades. You're going to bring your hands behind your head, come up into a small bridge so your hips lift up off the ground, and then you're just going to roll along your spine up to the top of your shoulder blades, down past your shoulder blades, and maybe towards the back of your rib cage. You don't want to go so far that you end up in that low back area. This will feel especially good after you've been sitting for a long time, if you've spent sustained time in that forward flex posture, getting up into a more extended position, especially with your arms and shoulders back too, will help relieve some of that muscle strain that comes with prolonged periods of sitting. Last one before we move to the front side of the body, we're going to target our lats, which are the big broad muscle group that run kind of along the side of our back. They actually come up to like the back side of our arm, close to like your armpit area. But if you'll lay on your side with your arm out above your head, and then you actually want to roll backwards just a little bit. Maybe even if you have a lot of tightness, maybe even just laying in this position will help relieve some of that tightness. And then you could roll that roller down your body a little bit and hang out in that position for a little while. You can actually do this too, where you keep the roller still and you just roll forward and backward along the roller, and then scoot that roller to a different position, do the same thing. That's going to target some adhesions in different places. And then if you want more of a stretch or more pressure, you can actually lift your hips up off the ground and then roll back and forth this way too. Next, we're going to flip over on our stomachs. We're going to do our quads next. So just like with our hamstrings and our calves, you can do both legs at the same time if you want. You'll just lay on top of it, roll yourself forward, and roll yourself back. Depending on how much tightness you have in your quads, this may be too much pressure, and that's okay. All you need to do is slide the roller out to the side. You're just going to keep one leg on the inner third of it, take your other leg out to the side and bent. And then like we did with our hamstrings, you can work in thirds again. You can work the bottom third, then progress to the middle, and then up to the top third, kind of towards your hip flexors. Lastly, we're going to target our hip flexors. Your hip flexors are the muscle group that sit right in the crease of your hip between your thigh and your trunk. We're going to do this one leg at a time as well. So one leg's going to be bent out to the side, laying on the inner third of that roller with the leg you're trying to address. And then you're just going to roll nice and easy along kind of the crease of your hip, maybe even going into the top third of your quad muscle. you actually have a muscle that's part of your quad muscle group that helps to flex your hip. So by rolling into the top portion of your thigh, that's going to address that muscle. These muscles, the muscles that flex your hip, get really tight whenever we sit for a long period of time. Anytime you've got sustained bending in your hip, such as when you're sitting, it'll increase the tightness here. So this is also a good one to do after you've been sitting for a long time. I hope you found this video to be helpful in some way, maybe learning about foam rolling for the first time or just learning some new information about foam rolling. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. In the meantime, take care.